LGR, London Greek Radio.
Hello and welcome to All About Autism, our monthly charity show here on London Greek Radio, aimed at helping us all understand autism better so we can together create a better society for autistics and the whole autism community. My name is James Gordon. I'm a charity trustee for the London Autism Group charity, and I'll be your host tonight, standing in for Chris Papadopoulos. I'm the father of one autistic child, and together with Chris I run the charity on a day-to-day basis. Today I'm joined by our two lovely co-hosts and charity volunteers, Sophia Christophi, who is herself autistic, and Ellie Kolatsi, a parent of an autistic child. As listeners may know, on each monthly episode we focus on a different topic connected to autism, and on today's show we'll be talking about experiences related to social communication at family gatherings such as Christmas and New Year's. If you have anything you'd like to ask or share that we can read out and discuss live on air, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can text us at 0737 661 1033 and email us at studio@lgr.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also like to point listeners to the London Autism Group Charity's YouTube channel, which now has all the past episodes of All About Autism uploaded, in case you ever miss a show and want to catch up. To find that, just go to YouTube and search for London Autism Group Charity. It's best to subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes that we upload there. So, Ellie and Sophia, firstly, Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year.
How was your Christmas and New Year period, Ellie?
Well, it was okay, thank you. But just to say hello to Chris who's listening. And also, just I think this is an important one, we feel, especially after Christmas. The build-up, I think, is also interesting, as well as the kind of in-betweens. I find that school's got a lot is busy, routine is not the usual routine, out of schedule. So, as well as being busy and tired, you're out of sync. So, before you even get to the celebrations, there's some difficulties. What do you think, Sophia?
Yeah, I think where we've discussed previously that transitions can be quite hard for autistic people, but there seems to be something in particular about Christmas that's even more challenging. And I think some of that will be down to the sort of expectations around Christmas and getting involved. We had a lot of social events this Christmas, and I'm still recovering from those events. But yeah, it must be even more challenging if you have school-age children and managing those additional transitions as well.
And I think even adults. What do you think, James? How did you feel with the build-up?
Yeah, I think I've always kept my Christmases quite small, so we've always been a small, tight-knit family, and I think we didn't know, we weren't diagnosed autistic back in the day, but it wasn't even talked about in those days. But I think we've naturally sort of kept to ourselves as a family unit. I've got one brother and one sister and my parents, and we've really just the most we've ever done is had like one other auntie come over, but we've kept the Christmas
manageable
things to a manageable size.
I think that's something that we've learned. I think it's what you can cope with, and if it's saying I can't do this but maybe another time, I think that's what it's got to be, and not feel guilty about doing that, because I think the anxiety, because I know that if I get anxious then obviously it feeds off on everyone else. So
yeah, I think we would rather than have a lot of friends over at once, we would have like maybe one or two at most, and that seemed to work for us.
Yeah.
So there's less stress.
Welcome back, everyone. A quick reminder to listeners that you can text us on 0737 661 1033 if you'd like for us to discuss your question or share your thoughts. We'd really love to hear from you. So, James, following on from our conversation about Christmas and New Year's, could you tell us a bit about the double empathy problem and how this might be related to such occasions?
Yeah, so until a few years ago, very little had been done to study communication between one autistic person and another autistic person. It generally been research had been done to study how neurotypical people, that's non-autistic people, communicated with autistic people, and the emphasis had been on trying to get autistic people to fit in or conform to neurotypical ways of communicating. So until an academic, a neurodivergent academic called Damien Milton came along, and he's created this theory called the double empathy problem, and he's found that when you look at the way one autistic person communicates with other autistic people, it's normally a much better experience. So we found that in the way we hold our community cafes and invite the whole autistic community to participate in that, and there's just a lot more empathy between neurodivergent people, a lot more shared experiences that we can talk about. We don't tend to use the small talk to just fill up space and that kind of thing. So when we're talking to other neurodivergent people, we are avoiding a lot of the stressful social situations. So when it comes to, you know, having these family Christmas occasions where often people are pressured to attend, then we're exposing autistic people to the kind of stresses, you know, that will interfere with communication, that will cause people to get stressed out and upset and not enjoy the situation, you know, not enjoy what's going on.
Yeah, I think traditionally any sort of miscommunication has always been blamed on the autistic person. Yeah. I think that's what's nice about the double empathy problem, is that it shows that when autistic people communicate with other autistic people, communication is quite clear and easy to do. And the same with neurotypical people communicating with other neurotypical people. It's just that when there's an autistic person communicating with a neurotypical person, sometimes there can be communication challenges. But that works both ways. I think that's what we've come to learn more recently, is that typically it was thought it was the autistic person who wasn't communicating properly. But actually, as difficult as it is for autistic people to read neurotypical people, it's the same the other way round. But I see what James is saying as well, especially at the community cafes. When you see autistic people together, you don't see a lot of these things that people think are communication problems, because you're communicating with somebody who shares your neurotype.
So I've got a question then. How can neurotypical people communicate better with autistic people?
Well, I think just understanding it and being educated about it. So, you know, doing a little bit of reading about the double empathy problem, speaking to autistic people about it, autistic advocates and educators. There's some good courses now that autistic people are doing.
Yeah, I think it's about recognising that autistic people communicate differently, and you can learn about that communication style the same way autistic people are constantly trying to figure out how to communicate with neurotypical people. It's just about learning how that person communicates and what you can do best to support them. So like James said earlier, a lot of autistic people don't really engage in small talk. So it might be that if you're talking to somebody who's autistic, you just go straight to the sort of deep conversation and don't worry about all the all the kind of social bits that go around it. But again, every autistic person is different, so it's about getting to know somebody on an individual basis and see what works for them.
I can definitely say the community cafes, the atmosphere and the sort of safeness of it is kind of, it envelopes you because it just is natural. If you want to have a conversation, you can. If you want to sit by yourself, you can. You can talk if you can. It's just, you can be what you want to be and there's no judgment. So I think that's really important to talk about these spaces where you are able to be your authentic self, bring your whole self to the space that will accept you and understand you.
Yeah, and I think that can be the thing that's particularly challenging about things like Christmas, New Year's celebrations, is there is an expectation to participate. So where you might see people throughout the year and you can go off and do your own thing, like I typically would take a book somewhere with me and sit in the corner and read. Because it's Christmas, there's this kind of extra pressure to participate and get involved with what everybody's doing, and that can be quite hard for autistic people to navigate and manage.
I think that's what I was thinking about, the build-up of it, because I think that's what you're talking about, having to, the social expectations of participating, and if you don't, somehow you're kind of, bit of a, it's not seen upon as, you're not joining in, or, you know, or it's socially acceptable, but actually, you're lucky I'm here. I've turned up.
And I think sometimes if people see that you're not participating, they might think that you're not enjoying yourself. And I think that's another thing, that autistic enjoyment can look quite different.
Oh, yes.
So I'm quite happy to be sat in the corner on my, just observing and watching what's going on. But I think sometimes families and friends might think, let's involve her because we don't want her to feel left out, or we don't want her not to enjoy herself. So there's a lot more that needs to be done to recognise that actually some autistic people are content just being present and not participating, or participating in small ways and taking some breaks and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing is where we've been told in advance, some people will come and they'll be comfortable talking about a certain topic or something, so we'll try and include them and talk about something they're interested in, and we'll take our cues from them, so they've at least participated. Then we'll let them decide when they've had enough, and there's no pressure on them to continue. But they still go away feeling like they've had a good time and they've participated, and that's the important thing, that they were there, that they were part of everything. Yeah,
but I think, as you said, and you've just alluded to, is it looks different for everyone, whether you're neurotypical or autistic. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. When you said if my son goes somewhere and you think, he's not enjoying himself, he'll come back and talk about nothing else. So in his own way, he's liked it and he's processing it, but not necessarily at that time.
Yeah. Do you find it easier to have the social events happen at your house rather than go to other places?
I think so.
Because then I guess the autistic person in the house has more sort of freedom to take themselves away if they need to, or the environment's familiar as well. I think it can be a bit more challenging to visit people.
Yeah.
because you don't know who's going to be there, how long it's going to go on for. I think there's a more control when you have these sorts of events at home.
Exactly that. He does have the control, and also we try and do, because he asks about timing, so as much as we can, we do like a schedule of when he's going to eat, and when he does ask when you're going, it's not being rude, he just has to prepare himself. When he asks you, oh, you going yet? That's his kind of anxiety of, are you just going to get up and go and I don't know about it?
Yeah, I guess that's another transition. He's just adjusted to having people in his house, so he'd like to know when they're going to leave. Yeah. But there are all sorts of adjustments that can be made to help include autistic people in social events.
But that could be seen as being rude. So if you're asked when are you leaving, it's not because he wants you to go. He's preparing himself. Again, it's that communication of, oh, why is he asking that? And I have to kind of explain, because you can see in their faces that you're a bit like, it's not because he actually wants you to go, it's he's preparing himself.
Okay. Sophia, do you think there's anything about the Greek culture that makes social communication for autistic and neurodivergent people particularly difficult?
I think in the Greek culture we value sort of getting together, so social events can be quite big. Lots of us come from very big families, so particularly over Christmas I saw lots of people, and often you'd be sat around a table and there can be sort of 4 or 5 different conversations going on at the same time, and sometimes it's hard to know when to sort of add your bit in, or if you should contribute to the conversation, things like that, that maybe some neurotypical people don't worry about or don't think about, but are sort of concerns for autistic people. I also noticed that over Christmas, a lot of the time when people are talking to each other, they can be quite loud. And some people may perceive that they're having an argument when they're not. It's just conversation. But culturally, we are kind of very big groups get together. There's a lot of gesturing, so understanding the non-verbal cues and all those things can all be a challenge. And just the general kind of expectation of participating if you're somewhere. And getting involved in whatever's going on. But I think within the Greek community we are becoming more aware of neurodivergence as well. Now, I did actually over Christmas have some really interesting conversations about autism.
Oh, good.
People saying that they have autistic relatives. And I think it's the first time I've noticed in all the years of Christmas and New Year's gatherings that there's been so much conversation about autism, which was really nice and reassuring.
Nice.
That people are becoming more aware and talking about it and sharing their experiences.
Oh, that's really good to hear. So it was a genuine interest of what it is, what's it all about, basically.
Knowing more about autism. I met people that work with autistic children or who have relatives who they suspect might be autistic. We talked about some of the challenges that come with being autistic, particularly that time of year and kind of all the Christmas expectations and unexpectedness. But it definitely feels like we're moving in the direction of it being spoken about more openly, and I too feel more comfortable saying, oh, actually I'm autistic, which I might not have done previously. Few years ago.
That's good. I think the noise level is something that's quite interesting, especially if you're in a small space and there's a lot of people, and the noise rises. So that's why I think it's important to be able to sort of get up. But sometimes you feel stuck. I feel stuck sometimes where I don't know what to do. It feels like, well, where do I go? I feel like this isn't my house. So again, it's that control of if you are in your own space and you are able to kind of move around in your familiarity. But just going back to what you were saying, Sophia, about people genuinely asking and being interested in your day-to-day life or wanting to know more. And it's sometimes, especially Christmas or whatever it is, whatever event, you can feel isolated and opt not to go anywhere because it just feels too much, too anxiety provoking. So it's easier just to stay at home and not go anywhere.
Yeah, I regularly texted my mum over Christmas to help me in various situations.
SOS.
So even having things like that as a strategy, if you're going somewhere and you feel like you're going to need that time away but you're not sure how to do it, if you pre-agree with someone in your family that if I send you a text message, could you just come over and check in on me sort of thing. So then my mum would come over and just make sure that
What's your code,
I was doing
Sophia?
okay. just help.
Oh, help!
Yeah. But yeah, there are strategies which I think we're going to talk about after the break as to how we can make these sorts of events more easy for autistic people to access.
This is LGR, London Greek Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to All About Autism. Final reminder that if you'd like to send us your question or thoughts about what we've been discussing today, please text it through to 0737 661 1033.
Ellie, what are some of your top tips that listeners might find helpful when they're hosting a social event, such as a birthday party or a wedding, that could make the experience more accessible to their autistic guests?
Okay.
I certainly had a accessible experience when I came to your house over Christmas.
Oh, that's nice. Good.
Ellie's daughter very kindly sent me a photo of the menu, so I knew what to expect, what there was going to be to eat. Literally everything on the menu was in the photo. And we all sat in the same seats that we sat in last Christmas.
We did, yes.
So that was familiar and
an autistic
reassuring.
household.
Yeah. And then when she realised that it was getting quite noisy and exciting at Christmas, she brought down a great big box of sensory toys, so we all had access to any fidgets and aids that we might need. So yes, it was very impressive that someone so young had such a good understanding of what an autistic person might need at that time.
Oh, thanks, Sophia. I should be happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because we talk about it so much, I think she tries to regulate herself as well as thinking about others. So, as you say, if the noise levels gets a bit high, it's almost like, well, we've got it, let's share it. So, actually, some people did have a fidget in their hand, so it did help to regulate. So, thinking about how we might make things more accessible. So, weddings, as we know, are quite a lengthy process, especially in the Greek ones. So, I think schedules are always helpful for us anyway. So, I mean, if you're going to go to the alasmam, which is the changing of the bride or the groom, that's quite lengthy and that's also quite noisy. So, it's always about preparation, visuals, as we talked about in previous show, having pictures, talking about it, perhaps some Greek music, wedding music. As much as you can, preparation for us is key, really, and visuals help. So that's helpful. My son always likes to know when he's eating. Eating is really important. Snacks are really important. Just making it a nice experience, really. If you have an adverse experience one occasion, it doesn't mean that it's going to follow through. So I think it's important that you always try and challenge and, where possible, involve them. So my daughter was able to think, what's going to help everyone on this occasion? So the sensory box was a hit, hopefully. Yeah. So wherever possible, menus, that's always food is always an interesting part of the day.
Yeah, I always find it helpful to look at pictures, especially if it's like an event or a restaurant or something. I'll go online and look at pictures of what it looks like inside, have a look at the car park. I like to know that I'll be able to get parked, have a look at the route. I have been known to do practice journeys
that's great.
To go somewhere before the actual event. And sometimes I think it's when the events don't always go to plan that you then get the ideas of how to make it better next time.
Yeah.
So it can be quite hard to go back into another event if it hasn't gone right the first time.
Yeah.
But actually, as I've got older, I've used it more as a learning experience to think, what could I have done differently to have made that more accessible for me this time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if it doesn't quite go to plan, that's you always think about how to make it better, but it's always trying to bring in your experience and other people's. So if it works for someone else and you talk about it, then you might think, oh, that's a good tip, that might help me.
Yeah, and I think with some of the longer events like weddings, maybe being more selective as to which is the most important part to attend. So if like going to the church service is going to be really difficult for a young autistic person, then maybe they don't go to that bit, but they join everyone afterwards for the reception. I think it's about kind of compromising and not expecting the autistic person to manage the entire event if that's not something that they can cope with.
Yes, I agree.
And being flexible to accommodate the fact that they might only be able to attend this part and not another part, and kind of celebrate the fact that they've come to the event.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Equipment like headphones are always helpful for us. They even if he doesn't use them, we've got them, and he knows he's got them. It's like a backup type thing. What else? Making sure that, as you say, Sophia, making sure there's a space where you can go if it gets too much. Sometimes it's not always possible, but if there's if you go to a venue and you check it out before, there could be something or somewhere that you can go just for that kind of peaceful time to just regulate and be able to gather yourself to continue, or as you say, if it's not you've reached your limit, which is we have a window, and if we exceed that, we need to go. And I wouldn't stay, because then it accentuates that sort of anxiety provoking. It just gets worse and worse. So that's when we know our limit, then we can go.
Are there any signs that you notice that your son might be getting dysregulated?
Yeah, he spins and flaps, so his arms might flap. I can tell. Also, his voice starts to have a different tone. So, yeah, I can just tell. And he's just had enough.
Yeah, sometimes it can be quite hard for the young person to say that to themselves, but usually there's an adult that knows them well enough to kind of pick out when things are starting to escalate.
Yeah, I think I was like that when I was small. I began to lose control of myself. I became very excitable, which is not like me. And maybe did something a bit dangerous. Yeah, or cheeky and dangerous. Okay. Yeah. And now my son is a bit like that. Yeah. A lot like that. I mean, I've found, definitely it's important for him to bring stuff from home, like his iPad with him, when he comes to all the community cafes and things like that. For the
exactly charity. That. If there's something like a transition toy that they have at home, there's no problem in bringing it with them so that they can feel some kind of comfort and familiarity, especially if it's a lot of people, a lot of noise, and whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I often take a book or a tablet, and I might not use it the entire time that I'm there, but just knowing that I have it, and if I did need to use it, that it was there makes a big difference. It's almost like having a comfort item. Yeah, it's something familiar, something that you know you can turn to if things are getting too much. But yeah, there are lots of ways to make events more accessible for autistic people.
Yeah, because I think it's important that people have a good memory of occasions. I've got one particularly traumatic memory where I got overexcited and ran into it was like a glass patio door that I didn't see the glass, So I sort of rebounded from the glass. Yeah, so a bit more understanding would have been nice. To have a break.
So, yes, to have a break.
Be able to have a break, yeah.
Yeah. Or someone to say, how you doing, or do you need a break, or how can I help?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think with younger autistic people, they may need someone to facilitate those things, and then kind of as you get older, you can learn to manage yourself. Or like me, even at my age, I know when I need a break, but I'm still not very good at knowing how to initiate that break, which is why one of my strategies is to text my mum and then she can come over and help. But I think particularly with young autistic people, if you recognise that they're kind of getting overstimulated or starting to show signs of dysregulation, sometimes it's helpful for you to say, shall we have a break?
Yeah.
Because they may not realise that they need that until it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thinking about it, autism again, we didn't know about it, but my dad, after that, he did. He was a lot more supportive and did sort of step in after a while when we were around to someone's house even and take me out. So there must have been signs like similar to your son that he could see that things were building up and I was getting overwhelmed. And he would just suddenly say, right, well, I'm going to take you out for a little while. And he sort of would find a local park or somewhere drive around.
Yeah, so
that really helped.
Yeah, that's it. It's just a distraction. So his sibling will just come stand next to him and just say, talk to him about his favourite thing, and he'll completely change his switch direction. So he'll be sort of back on track. So she'll just stand there for a while he carries on talking, and she holds him or whatever she does.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So she picks up cues as well. I think it's just natural.
She's very
as well.
Intuitive.
Yeah, so she does my job very well.
Yeah. I noticed over Christmas when she said to you, "Oh, is he sensory seeking?"
Oh, yeah.
So she picks up on kind of all the cues that he's showing, and I think it's really nice that they have that relationship as well. And he's got his twin to see him through the tricky situations.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the show. Our next show will take place on the 1st of February at 7 p.m, which is, as always, the first Thursday of the month. I'd like to remind you to pop into one of our charity community cafes to meet the community if you wish to find support and connect with others. Currently, we have community cafes in Southgate, Islington, Ealing, Woodford and Grays. All information about these community cafes and how else the charity might be able to support you can be found on our website, which is londonautismgroupcharity.org. That's londonautismgroupcharity.org. And a reminder that you can find the recordings of these episodes on the YouTube channel, as James mentioned previously, which you can find by searching YouTube for London Autism Group Charity, and you can subscribe to them. So thanks, James, for coming in. And Sophia, I just wanted to say a very big good luck to you soon with your Viva. So next month, I think we'll be introducing you as Dr. Sophia Christophi. So a massive good luck to you. And I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine.
I hope so.
All that hard work, and you can maybe talk about it. And thanks to Tony Nelfido for helping everything in the background, and have a great month, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
On FM, on digital radio, on your mobile and online. This is London Greek Radio.